This is yours, right? Thank you. Okay, good morning. I see some familiar faces in here. I hope that it's not far too early a start. I got here at 8:30 because for some reason I thought the program starts at 8:30, but I'm glad to see it's a packed room. And it also shows that you take punctuality very, very serious. Colleagues, I'd just like to start by thanking both, is it Zanok and ISPA for co-hosting this important event. It is truly encouraging that the theme of this event is universal and meaningful connectivity, as the theme aligns with what government's thinking is shifting towards. And while we cannot say that we have fully achieved universal connectivity, we have made some progress thanks in part to the part that is played by the private sector. The recently published Digital Infrastructure Investment Study commissioned by the DBSA found that the access gap now sits at 2% of households in South Africa. While we cannot ignore that 2%, I think it would not be appropriate to spend a bulk of our resources based on closing that gap. I think what is important is rather the question we need to ask ourselves is how we can leverage the fact that 98% of households have access to connectivity to unlock the economic potential of that connectivity. And the answer to that, in my view, is meaningful connectivity, which is connectivity that is fast and reliable, always available, affordable, safe and secure, but most importantly, supported by access to appropriate devices and enhanced adequate skills. So where government's focus has historically been on the supply side of factors such as access to connectivity, the evidence suggests that shifting our focus to demand side factors is the necessary step if we wish to achieve meaningful connectivity. In particular, I believe that our focus should be on three elements: affordability, devices, and skills. I also believe that the most effective tools are not necessarily direct investment or running government broadband activities. The unsatisfactory return on investment, for instance, on the SA Connect program, is a testament to that, with government having too few sustainable connections to show for the money invested at the scale of this project. So merely keeping on going what we have always done, despite clear evidence that it is not working as it could or should, is surely not the answer. The question then becomes what government can do differently to address the issue of affordability, devices, and skills. And too often, the discussion within government is about our constraints, but that discussion on its own is not very productive. It is clear to me that the conversation must shift towards how we use the resources and powers that government does have, and it does have a lot to make a better effect. So what would be the policy, regulatory, and legislative levers that we can pull to create a more desirable investment environment? How do we ensure that investments that come into our country create both profit for the private sector and impact for society? And how do we use state funds more efficiently so that connectivity initiatives where government is involved do not cost multiples more than initiatives that are run by the private sector? And these are the questions that I'm constantly grappling with. So it would be dishonest to say that we've figured how every granular detail, both through meaningful partnerships with industry players and civil society, and how we are steadily updating government's approach to connectivity. One area where that shift is slowly becoming evident is around affordability. And if we are indeed serious about meaningful connectivity, then the price of data bundles, for instance, just as much as the existence of a network, becomes critical. A technically available service that a household cannot afford in practice is not meaningful connectivity. It is theoretical connectivity. And that is why we continue to support measures that can improve competitive outcomes, lower the cost to communicate, and make better use of the policy and regulatory tools that are available to the state. This includes creating an enabling environment for such investments, reducing unnecessary friction in infrastructure deployment, and ensuring that public policy supports lower cost structures over time. And affordability is not merely about retail pricing. It is also about the structural issues behind pricing: spectrum, energy costs, backhaul, municipal approvals, infrastructure duplication, and the time and uncertainty involved in rolling out networks, which is something that many of you in the room know well. And if we want to make better outcomes for consumers, we must remain focused on the underlying conditions that shape the cost base of the sector. That is why reforms such as efficient rapid deployment, better coordination across different spheres of government, and a stable and predictable investment environment remain critical. And this is why we are championing amendments to the ECA and updating the rapid deployment policy. Because these are not peripheral issues. They go directly to the economics of network operation and service delivery. The second area is around access to devices. For millions of South Africans, the real barrier is no longer whether a signal exists, but whether they have the appropriate device that can make meaningful use of that signal. So connectivity without a capable device gets reduced to a limited form of inclusion. One of the first steps that we took was around the removal of the ad valorem excise duty on lower cost smart devices, which came into effect last year post the announcement by the Minister of Finance. And that action sends an important signal that government does understand that device affordability is now a key part of communications policy, not just tax policy. And initial data shows, in the form of a study that the Digital Council did, that a 16% rise in first-time smartphone purchases took place subsequent to that policy intervention. And if that trend is sustained, it could have real developmental impact by bringing more people into the digital economy for the first time. At the same time, we ought to be realistic. Pressures in global handset supply chains, including memory-related input constraints, may still place upward pressure on prices. And while tax reform helps, it is not the silver bullet. We will need to continue looking at the full device ecosystem, such as local assembly opportunities, refurbishment and secondary markets, financing models, and the broader regulatory environment that can support access to decent, affordable smart devices at scale. The third area that I think is critical is around skills. We sometimes speak about connectivity as though the job is done once a household is passed by a network or has a handset in place. But meaningful connectivity requires the capacity and capability to use digital tools productively, safely, and more reliably. That relates to the need for basic digital literacy. But it also means something more. It means the ability to search, to transact, to learn, create work, and even protect ourselves online, because it means enabling everyone who's connected to be an active, proactive participant in the digital world. And if we do fail on skills, it would reduce even an affordable network and affordable smartphones to not translating into inclusive growth. The real dividend comes when connectivity is converted into capability, and when that capability is in turn converted into opportunity. For that reason, government's role can't merely be about infrastructure. It must be about building a wider digital ecosystem in which access, devices, skills, and trust reinforce each other. And in my view, the lesson from the rollout of SA Connect isn't simply that government should be spending more. The lesson is that government must be much smarter about where it intervenes, how we intervene, and what role is best placed to play. This means that government's role is to increasingly to enable, to coordinate, to minimize risk, and to partner rather than to attempt to substitute for the market where the market is already delivering. Our focus should rather be on leveraging scarce fiscal capacity where the social return is highest and where private incentives alone are unable to close the gap. That means a sharper focus on public facilities, underserved communities, and catalytic interventions that can unlock broader investment opportunities. It means using public resources to crowd in private capital, not to elbow it out. It means aligning broadband policy with spectrum obligations, digital public infrastructure, device access, and digital skills, rather than treating each as a separate silo. And it means being much more disciplined about outcomes, not kilometers of fiber for their own sake, not connectivity as a line item, but reliable, usable, affordable connectivity that can help improve education outcomes, health access, entrepreneurship capacity, and access to public services. One of the continued implementations of infrastructure-related reforms that can reduce friction in rollout and expansion. Another one is the extent to which we can better align public policy with private investments in backbone, access, cloud, and edge infrastructure. And so for a technical community such as this one, I don't need to explain to you what universal connectivity without resilience becomes fragile or connectivity without trust is incomplete, because you are well abreast of those. But as we pursue broader access, we must also keep up pace with issues such as routing resilience, infrastructure security, the quality of service, internet exchange development, and the overall robustness of such networks in a society that is increasingly becoming dependent on them. And ultimately, our task is not only to connect the last 2% that I spoke about earlier. It is equally to ensure that we make the 98% to count. It is to ensure that connectivity is affordable enough to use, device-enabled to matter and be adopted, and skilled-enabled enough to be able to change lives and uplift people out of poverty. It is to move from access to impact, and to create a much more enabling state, a more focused use of public funds, and greater emphasis on affordability, devices, and skills. All of these will need, though, stronger partnerships with those who have the capacity and the expertise to build, to maintain, and improve the networks on which our digital future depends on. And while we can acknowledge that South Africa has made real progress in this regard, universal and meaningful connectivity is not a finish line that we cross once. It is a continuous effort to improve the quality, the affordability, and safety and usefulness of digital access for our people. And I hope that as you continue your technical discussions over the course of this event, you'll also see government not as a distant observer, but as a partner that is trying, imperfect as it is, to update its approach in line with the realities of the sector. We may not get everything right immediately, but I think what we are trying to demonstrate is a commitment to listening, to learning, and building a better framework for investments, innovation, and inclusion. And if we do that well, then connectivity will not only link people to networks, it will link them to opportunity, to dignity, and to the growth that we all want to see happening in our economy. Thank you very much.